What's up, Gator Nation? Welcome into the Gators Online Show. Zach Albaverdi and Nick Del Toro here. And we are back with another episode and another interview. Today we'll be joined by Florida punter Jeremy Crawshaw to talk about his time with the Gators, his offseason, and obviously a new member joining the special teams room, Nick, which we'll kick off this show with. How are you doing, my friend?
Doing well. Got 5 days off last week. Had some plans to go somewhere, but then just thought, hey man, I'm just gonna stay in Gainesville. It's a 5-hour drive home to see the family. Wife couldn't get off work, so we put plans to go to like Savannah or something. Put those off. So just kicked it in Gainesville, but didn't have work. So nice little recharge of the batteries before baseball season starts, and spring football's in the middle of that, and my nights will be spent at Condren Ballpark and my days will be spent on campus watching football.
Yeah, no, it's creeping up. It's almost here, and obviously basketball is in full swing. We'll talk more about this toward the end of the show after we are joined by Jeremy. But what a win for Todd Golden and the Gators basketball team last night. A thriller in Rupp Arena. Walter Clayton Jr. just cold-blooded from downtown. 7 3-pointers, career high, and he'd hit 6 twice before, so it wasn't like this is something out of the ordinary for him. But, man, for him to step up, hits the game-tying 3, and really – for folks that watched the game, was redemption because that same guy, Shepard, had blocked a 3-pointer from him less than 2 minutes earlier. So he ties it up, then hits the go-ahead in OT, and the Gators get their first win over a top 10 team on the road since 2003. So definitely want to give a shout out.
20 years, 21 years.
20 plus. Mm-hmm. It's a long time, man. I saw some folks on our Gators Online message board that were like, well, the 04s, what about all the teams they beat in the tournament? But those aren't true road games.
Yeah, and redemption for just last month, a game you probably should have won at home.
No doubt.
Crumpled down the stretch. Winning on the road in the SEC is hard. It's gotten a lot harder. I saw a bunch of Kentucky fans freaking out about the losses they've had. Like, the SEC has just gotten a lot better in basketball over the last decade. So great win for Todd Golden.
Portal God Todd.
Yeah, great win for them.
Listen, man, those transfers are showing up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's jump into it. I want to start things as we always do with a shout out to My Perfect Franchise. If you're ready to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream, looking for a side hustle while working your current job, wanting to diversify, build wealth, and or leave a legacy, Andy can help. He's a franchise consultant as well as a franchise owner and helps people find franchises that fit their skill sets, financial requirements, time to commit, and more. His services are 100% free, and he's here to help if you have any questions about business ownership with franchises. You can learn more and contact Andy anytime at myperfectfranchise.net or calling or texting him at 404-973-9901. Now, Nick, before we're joined by Jeremy Crawshaw, let's talk about somebody that's joining that special teams room as a coach. Joe Houston from the New England Patriots is the latest hire by Billy Napier. He comes over, obviously, after some time with the legendary coach, Bill Belichick, and obviously is now going to come and coach Florida special teams. And his official title is senior analyst for special teams. He's going to be working with Chris Couch. He's got a background as a kicker, and obviously he's been pretty impressive, looking at his coaching track record. Nick, what do you think about this hire?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Chris Couch is still there. And I think his name is Brandon Taylor, still there, but you're adding another voice to special teams, to that room, to that unit. I don't think that he's gotten to work with the guys yet, but you're adding another voice, and obviously somebody from the NFL who's had a lot of experience there. And as a Dolphins fan, I love watching the Patriots lose Bill Belichick and the rest of their staff and everyone that's terrorized me for my entire life. So the more that the Patriots lose, the better for me, in my opinion.
No doubt. Well, we'll talk more about that hire and special teams. But what better to do that than the position other than Jeremy Crawshaw, who's going to join us now on the Gators Online Show. Jeremy, welcome in. How you doing, my friend?
How you doing? Good to see you guys.
Absolutely.
Good to see
How's
you.
Your off season treating you so far?
It's been pretty good. Nice start in the weight room, getting big and strong. So yeah.
Did you have a good winter break at all? Did you get to get away or go home?
Yeah, I stayed in country. I went down south with a few teammates, bounced around, enjoyed life. SoFlo, as you say.
That's my neck of the woods. Where were you down there?
I went to Orlando for a little bit there with Rocco, and went further down south with a few old teammates. So.
Gotcha. That's Orlando's not south. Now, from Broward County, anything north of like Palm Beach, now we're into like Central Florida.
Fair enough.
But let's start with you. I wanted to give you a chance. You were, I'm guessing, 16, 17 years old when you told your mom, dad, like, hey, I want to move 1,000 kilometers away to Sydney to chase a dream of moving away even farther from you, of going to university in America. What is that like? What is that conversation as a young kid to tell your parents that?
I was actually probably even younger, to be honest. It came around a point in my life where I was deciding if I wanted to stay in high school or if I wanted to drop out and get a trade. Something like carpentry and an electrician. My mum is an English teacher, or she was. She's a high school teacher predominantly now. But she just wanted me to stick it out. Just keep looking at what options I had open. And for me, that was a time in my life where I was like, what do I really want to do after school? Looking around online, I ended up stumbling across Pro Kick Australia, their website. So had a look through there. I thought that was the best thing since sliced bread. And I was like, I want to do that. So I remember I showed it to my mom and she's like, oh, that's cool. I don't think they really thought much of it. But for me, I was hooked.
She was worried you were going to get scammed. This was some kind of like,
maybe. They're
going to take your money and run.
Yeah, probably. So she's probably just like, it's just a phase, nothing big. But I spent the last 2 years of high school, just kicking a footy on the side of playing AFL as well. So I was hooked and I was ready to do it. And like you said, like my parents kind of didn't really believe in it. So when it came time to doing those tryouts, my coaches back home, John A. Smith and Nathan Chapman, did a really good job selling them. So here I am.
What was awesome. What was the biggest culture shock? I'm sure there's plenty. You probably stuck to like Mackey's for a little while once you got here because that's a traditional food. That's McDonald's. But what were some of the bigger culture shocks?
This is kind of like a tough one. I mean, it's probably just the differences between how people talk. So in Australia, we use a lot of slang, say things very different compared to people in America. And then even then, people in Florida talk different to people in Georgia, up north, things like that. So when I got here, I had to learn how to talk like a Floridian. I had to lose a lot of the slang that I used just so people would stop asking me, like, can you say that again? They just didn't understand what I was saying. So that was probably the biggest shock I had to get over, was just changing the way I talk. So now when I talk to people back home, they often tell me I sound Americanized. I don't have any Aussie slang anymore. I just sound real American. So
who's this bloke? Where'd my mate go?
Exactly.
Jeremy, what was it like adapting to the SEC and college ball here, and especially early on in your career? What was that like seeing it at this level coming from Australia?
Yeah, so before I came over here, I was just a young high school player. I'd play for the local clubs. Maybe 100, 200 people would show up to that. Just pretty much their parents driving their kids to the games. That's who was watching our games. So we'd, go play our little hearts out for absolutely nothing on the line. So when I trained to come here, I think it was a big shock, just the way things are run. It's not professional, but the way things are run is in a professional manner,
Yeah.
So we got here and big stadiums, facilities, multiple team doctors, staffers, the whole deal. So it was quite a big shock on that part. And the next shock was coming in and actually playing American football. I'd never really put pads on and had a rush. So when I first got here that COVID year, we ended up missing that spring ball and getting thrown in the deep end during that half fall camp deal before the season.
Yeah.
It was a shock. I was lucky enough to have a great fifth-year senior, Jacob Finn, ahead of me. He ended up playing that year and ended up redshirting, but I learned so much from him, sitting behind him, that when I was able to come in and start in 2021, I'd learned a lot and I was ready to go.
That's awesome. We hear about kickers and their nerves and stuff before going out for an attempt. What was that like your first time playing in the swamp or in an SEC stadium and having to go out there? Were there any jitters or nerves at all?
It's a little different though, because like nobody especially when you're at home, nobody's happy to see you on the field. Outside of me, big punting advocate, but nobody's happy when you're jogging out there.
Yeah. It's different for sure. There's a lot more riding on the line. As I said before, we just go play in front of 100 people. Nothing really mattered. But I think the first time I'd ever played a down was a hold against Arkansas in that 2020 year. I was nervous. Yeah, absolutely. I was nervous. But the first time I ever punted was that bowl game that year, the Cotton Bowl.
Okay.
And for some reason, I was just unusually calm. I was ready. I was excited to go punt, So that game, I think I had 2 punts for a 49-yard average. It was a great way to start the career. But I was just ready. I was calm. And I think that's something that I try and maintain as I go throughout my college and hopefully professional career, is just staying calm, staying in the moment, slowing things down. Don't let it get ahead of myself. So now we are much more on that side than being really nervous. So
sure. No doubt.
Yeah.
What have you learned? I guess punting is so technical. A lot of it goes over our heads, or it's certainly over fans' heads. Just stadium to stadium. What are you looking for? Every stadium is constructed differently. How much is the weather a factor, or is it just like, hey, I just didn't hit that ball well? Or is it like, hey, there's an open end zone over here and that is causing the wind to come in a different way? What are you looking for, I guess, on a pregame any given week?
Yeah, we are specialists. You might call us divas in the way we like things. We like the balls to be a certain way. We like our
particular,
very particular, very, very particular. So the day of a game, we'll be sitting on the weather app watching what the mild gusts, the weather, if it's going to rain, is it sunny? How hot is it? How cold is it? Stuff like that. So going into an away game or a home game, what the wind kind of will do. Those bigger, taller stadiums kind of hide the wind a bit better, but create a bit of a swirl in the stadium. Those smaller stadiums are a bit harder to play in because there's no real stopping the wind from coming through. But that's kind of the things we look for pre-game, is how is the wind swirling? Are there any wind tunnels up there you can pick up just to get the ball up there and let the wind take it? And those are all things you take into pre-punt in the game as well, and how you choose that kind of punt. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. But yes, as you said, a lot of people don't quite understand that part of that.
Speaking to that, Harrison is here for most of our shows. He did not know how particular you were about balls.
Yeah, we like our balls a particular way, So, yeah, I think you go around most special team players specs and say, like, what kind of ball would you use? And they would say, we love the juiciest, broken in, shiny balls you can give us. They travel better, they come off the foot nicer, all of that good stuff. fresh out of the bag balls are really tough to kick. They're harder. The leather isn't as broken in, stuff like that. So yeah, we are very particular with the way we like our balls.
What's the worst weather game that you've had so far?
Worst weather game. I don't know if I've particularly had any bad ones. We've been lucky enough the South doesn't really get bad weather games like they would up north. We get a couple cold games a year. They're kind of tough, but not really. You just rug up nice and warm, maybe double sock if it's really cold. But I think one that sticks out to me was the 2021 LSU year. There was a really bad wind that was ripping through the stadium that day, and it didn't matter how good you hit a ball into that wind, it was just dying. It was just hitting the wall and just coming straight back down to the ground. So I think that might have been my toughest. But outside of that, we're pretty good with the weather, and we can deal with it pretty well.
And on that note, as you think back, obviously, you've had some years now with the punting duties. What would have been outside of the 28-yard dash that you had, some of the highlights, of your time, at UF and obviously having a starting job?
Mm-hmm. There's good plays that you have as a punter. We've had a couple fumbles returned over my career, some big punts to switch the field, a couple inside the 5. The ones that really stick out of those games, though, that you could feel the electricity in the air from the fans and the atmosphere. To be honest, those were the ones that I remember sticking out to me. Those were the ones like when we beat Utah in the Swamp. Some big games like that where they were close, the fans were involved. Those are the things I remember. Because a lot of times you go back on a punt and you don't quite remember things just because of the moment. You were so focused and locked in on this one thing, you didn't realize what was happening outside of you. So I think it was those games where you were able to take a step back for a second and just take in where you were. Those are the games that I remember the most.
Now, on the flip side of that, are there any punts or plays that stick with you, from the past couple seasons that you just wish you could have had back or feel like, didn't go your way?
I feel like we all have them. I would never take any punt back, because each punt causes something different afterwards. It's those punts that end up building your resilience for future games.
No doubt.
That you need. If you're going to go hit great balls all the time, you hit one and you fall apart, what's the point? Right? You can't go to the next level, have a bad punt, and then there goes your career because you can't get over that. We're going to have bad punts. We're going to have bad kicks, right? You have to be sorry for them and say, I didn't mean to do that. But I'm going to give you my best on the next one as well. And it's about the shake back, so I don't take back any of that. Sometimes the punts or the games that I had that were my worst, I ended up just getting in the lab, spending every day doing ball drops, stretching, meditations, visualizing stuff. And I came back and had a great week the next week.
Yeah.
And on that note, when you mentioned guys at the next level, there's probably no position outside of kicker and punter that have less jobs in the NFL. And we talk about the NFL being the not for long league. The longevity for punters and kickers is probably the highest, as long as you're kicking in between the uprights or dropping punts inside that little coffin corner. What is the process? Because every once in a while we'll see kickers or punters leave school early. Evan McPherson left early, and he's had a great career with Cincinnati. But how closely are you guys looking every given year? Like, okay, this punter's 43 years old. Will he finally hang it up? And will there be one of the 32 jobs opening? How closely do you look at that, especially, heading into this off season and you're looking at the landscape of the league?
Mm-hmm. Those are things you look for. I think I might be one of the only ones maybe that like kind of check on how punters are doing throughout the years in the league. This being my last season, I'm watching closely just how my performance ranks against those in the NFL. You see who's doing better, who's doing worse, who's older, and who's younger, and which teams might be looking for a punter. But at the same time, you try not to get ahead of yourself. You've got one more season. You can make or break in a season. So just keep the head down, keep doing the best you absolutely can, but have in the back of your mind that is the goal, and so put your best foot forward towards that.
Jeremy, what was last season like for you personally? Obviously, accolades wise, you set the single season program record with 48.9 per attempt. You earned, all SEC honors from the AP. Just how did it feel to kind of have those personal accolades? I know obviously the season didn't go the way you wanted for your team, but it was a good year for you.
Yeah, it was one of my better years for sure. I believe I didn't start the season off real hot. Probably just had to get myself out of a funk there. But I think that start kind of pushed me. It kind of bugged me seeing that I wasn't playing up to the standards that I knew I had. So in that, I ended up putting the most time and effort into punting that I ever have. I spent probably hours a day in the facilities watching film on NFL punters, watching situational film as well, just doing ball drops, line work, everything I could to make sure I was better. And that ended up correlating, and you can see that throughout the rest of the season that it was showing up in games and just helping out my team the best I could, because that is what our position is to help the team. So if I wasn't doing that in the first few games, I had to check myself, reevaluate what I was doing, and come back better.
Was that more work than you had to put in the past?
I think it was just I had chosen to put more work in. I took it probably more seriously because I knew I had to step up. I'd had a solid couple of years before that.
Sure.
But I think coming towards the end now, I needed to pick it up. I knew that within myself.
I remember chirping at you in Salt Lake City, telling you with this elevation, I needed like a 6-second hang time. How much was that in your mind, in Adam's mind at the time, and Smack as well? Just that elevation, and was it even a factor once you got there? Because we talked about it for 3 months leading up to the game.
Yeah. No, it definitely was. I don't think I was hitting great balls that game. But I was still getting 55, 57 yards. So I was, I don't think I hit quite a good ball in my standards during that game, but they were still going almost 60 yards. So it now sits with me, and it bugs me that if I hit a good ball, I think I probably could have put it 70 on the fly. But, that's something I have to live with now, and ended up causing me to be better for the rest of the season. So it definitely helps, that altitude, for sure.
What is your ideal hang time? Do you have a goal that you're trying to hit, or what's your best?
Perfect sweet spot is just a 5.0. It's automatic fair catch. We have some of the best gunners, I think, in the SEC in the nation, to be honest. They get down there and cause fair catches and get in the faces of the returners. So I put it up there, 50 yards, 55 yards, 5.0. It's fair caught, no return. Good for the average, good for the team.
Yeah, and if you look at the NFL, that's kind of all they want. Johnny Townsend was one of the best punters in Florida history, and he just would outkick his coverage. And you would kick it, 5.0, but 60, 70 yards, and your gunners aren't going to run 70 yards in 5 seconds. Right. The NFL wants you to punt 40, 50 yards, hang it up there, and no return. So it's kind of you got to rein that back in. Maybe you don't want to be punting 70 yards in Utah.
Right. Right, exactly.
Unless it's pregame, and you can get it put it up on Instagram or something.
Yeah. Just bring a couple.
Nick mentioned that the Townsend, obviously the Townsend brothers, two of several successful punters here at Florida, and then obviously the Gators have had several elite kickers as well. What's it been like to be part of that special teams fraternity and get to know some of those guys, especially as they come back around the program?
Yeah. That's, I think, like some of the biggest parts of coming and playing at Florida is that there's history before you, and there's a standard to continue the history. And I love that. I'm all for it. I've had the joy of getting to know the Townsend brothers as they've come back, sometimes to train for the NFL, and just get to sit and watch them, watch their processes and how they do things, and meeting even further past players, So it's good to continue that that excellence at Florida, and that's really what coming to Florida as a specialist is about. We've got deep history here, and it's our job to continue it.
Now, Jeremy, Nick mentioned that Utah game. That was the first of a few games last season where there were some special teams blunders, and obviously those units took a lot of heat. And most of the time, maybe didn't have anything to do with you. What was that like to go through as a player, where you knew that was going on? I'm sure those guys felt bad about when those situations happen, and just trying to work through those.
Yeah, it's a terrible thing when plays don't quite go how they are expected to go. I know on those special teams blunders last year, we obviously didn't mean to have that happen, but after the games, we reevaluate ourselves. We look at how it went. We're incredibly sorry for having those plays, to the fans and having an impact on the game like that. But in the sense of looking at those blunders that happened, we also had quite a good season. Special teams wise, I mean, net punting, we were 4th in NCAA Power 5 and 1st in the SEC. Kickoff return efficiency, we were 13th in Power 5 with 62% efficiency. Kickoff return was 6th in the Power 5, 2nd in SEC. Punt return average, we were 18th in NCAA Power 5. And in an overall efficiency, we were 9th in the NCAA and 4th in the SEC. So, I mean, considering we had 37 freshmen play for us on special teams last year, we still did really well. We had young guys who were inexperienced, and we gave them experience. So, I mean, coming into this year, we should be a lot better off. We had those woes, and we were sorry for that, and we're doing our best to get back to the prestigious standard that is UF special teams. But we still really had a good year compared to what some think. We did really well, expected points as well. So in situations where we were expected to do this or do that, we outperformed in those. And we were one of the top special teams in the country in that aspect as well.
And you sent out a post too. Obviously, it was about your punt return, or excuse me, your punt average, and your post on X is let them know, hey, none of this happens without a good special teams coordinator. And you've obviously been very supportive of Chris Couch. What's your experience been like with him? What have you enjoyed about working with him, and just the job that he's done with the special teams?
He's in my honest opinion, he's an absolute mastermind when it comes to special teams. His schemes and other things like that, they work. Like I said, I think we just had young freshmen who, as the game goes on, things can happen and it comes quickly a blur. But he's great, as a coach and as a person as well. I love coming in every day and chatting with him and going over things for punt. And he's always really open and responsive to things that I bring up and say, like, hey, maybe we could do this better, or maybe we could do that better. And he says, okay, let's see if we can implement a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And, I think that's why it was, although we had those plays that people like to hold on to and say that is special teams, we turned it around and we finished the season pretty well, and a lot of that can be put to him.
I was trying to figure something out, so maybe you can give us like the dummies guide to hidden yardage. I was trying to read a story. Bill Parcells actually was the one that wrote it. Right. But some of it still goes over my head. But I think you guys did really well in that hidden yardage category last year in terms of special teams. Yeah.
So, I mean, hidden yardage is kind of, it's the expected starting position of the other team versus ours. So each week we come in and we look at that. It'd be, for example, Florida started on average on the 23-yard line versus your opponent who started on the 37. So they had, this or that. They would have a better starting position, or we would have a better starting position. And we did really well in pinning them deep, in stopping their kickoff returns, and keeping them deep in their own field. So that's hidden yardage in saying that we kept the team at a longer, disadvantage to getting a touchdown. And in that sense, that's all we're aiming for as specialists, is to get points and to keep them as deep in their own field as possible. So we did a really good job with that on our coverage teams as well as the specialists. doing their jobs. So yeah.
And speaking of specialists, obviously Trey Smack, what great kicker name, by the way. Took over last year and got to show us what he could do. What'd you think of the job that he did, kind of, getting his feet wet for the first time?
Yeah, he did really well. He came in, after the start of that last season, ended up just smacking every ball through the uprights. He had a really good string of a couple of weeks there. He was SEC Special Teams Player of the Week a couple times. So he really stepped up well. And to bring up Rocco as our snapper, he's a really good dialed-in snapper. He gets the laces good for us. And it's an absolute joy to have him because he makes my job easier, makes the op times quicker, makes it smoother, just for me to put it down, get Smack to put it through the uprights. So
go ahead.
I mean, as a specialist group, I think we've done really well, meshing together and trying to do our job the best we can. So I'm proud of the guys in our room that do that.
And on that note, what is that relationship like between the three of you guys on that field goal operation, and how much pride do you take in your role as the holder?
Yeah, it's look, we take huge pride in what we do. A lot of times you guys don't realize, but we'll go back to the sideline and Rock will go, "How far did you turn that?" And I say, maybe a slight turn. He goes, "Oh, they weren't right." And that's the kind of expectations we have when we go into those games. I want to give Trey the exact ball, tilt and lean that he needs. It needs to be exactly on the spot. I don't want it to be an inch or half an inch or even a split eighth of an inch away from where I put my fingers for him to spot the ball. So we take huge pride in all that. And over the last year of being together, we've meshed well together. The chemistry is really good between us. We all get along. That's kind of what you need when you spend so much time with each other, working on such finite details.
Just a couple dudes playing with balls. That's all. Exactly. That's all that is.
That's it. Just a couple dudes.
Are they the roommates? I think you used to live with Trent. But is it a specialist house now?
It's not. They I think they live in different deals. We all do. But it would be cool to have a specialist house. Maybe it's a good thing that we aren't. We're not together all the time. So maybe that's a good thing. We're even in the same lift group right now. So we spend a lot of time together. So
speaking of the lift group, there's been a big change there. What has Craig Fitzgerald, Coach Fitz, I don't know what you guys call him, what has his introduction to you guys been? And then, I mean, you were here with Dan and Nick Savage. So this is your third strength coach. How has it been? Just some people might call that turnover, but you're getting a lot of different perspectives on lifting, strength, running, conditioning. How has that been? And what's your first impressions of Coach Fitz?
Yeah. Like you said, we've been through a lot of, we've transitioned through different strength coaches. Nick Savage had his perks. Coach Hockey had his perks. And now Coach Fitzgerald has his perks as well. So when it comes to him, I think we're still really enjoying the newness that he brings, his way of doing things that is different and that is new to us. So we're really enjoying these first couple of weeks with him. So it's been good.
What stands out the most about him is he seems like an energy guy for sure.
Mm-hmm. He has great energy, and I feel like all three past coaches have had great energy. So, again, the change of perspective for him has been great. We're ready to get back to work and love coming in every day.
And on Valentine's Day, are you excited to have? I mean, you've had your Valentine's Day back, I think, for a couple of years now.
Right.
Nick Savage obviously had his Valentine's Day massacre workouts. Mm-hmm. Do you know if Coach Fitzgerald has something planned?
I do not yet. I do not. So you could spring that on us if he has.
Might have ruined your day.
Maybe he's just holding his cards close to his chest. But as of right now, I don't know.
You don't seem intimidated, though.
I do not.
Yeah, you're ready for whatever.
I think after it's my 5th year in college football now, I think you kind of just learn how to roll with the punches and give your best at all times.
And on that note, obviously heading into 2024. What are your expectations for this team? coming off last season. Obviously, there's been some changes, but you guys also have some key pieces back, like Graham and some guys on the defensive side of the ball. What's the energy like with this group as you guys kind of turn the page?
As of right now, really the only thing that I can speak on is the energy and the meshing. As of right now, we've got a good group. The young guys have come in, and we've had a couple transfers come in as well. So I'm liking the energy that we're putting out right now. At this time in the year, that is the most important thing. We're working out and we're meshing. We're trying to become a good brotherhood together. But like you said, some key pieces coming back. We'll see how all that comes together in the spring. I'm hoping to return a lot of those guys that played on special teams last year and see if we can't build on the great year we had in special teams. We have a lot of guys coming back on punt that I'm excited for, that, got their feet wet last year. And I feel like have the expertise and the experience to come back and do a good job this year, and I feel like if I can do my job as a leader to get those guys going in those areas, I will do the best I can to make sure that we bring Florida special teams back to the position it was.
And I know you guys got a new guy joining the room as well, Joe Houston. I don't believe you met him yet, but what are your expectations for what he's going to do to kind of bring more out of your guys' group? And I know he's got a kicking background as well, so that's got to be attractive.
Right. I haven't met him yet. I don't know the exacts of all that position just as of right now, but I'm excited to have him here. It'll be good.
Sure. He's a kicker coming from the Patriots. That's always good.
He's a kicker, so kickers are weird. Punters are people, so you probably have to walk around eggshells a little bit. Kickers are even more particular than punters, who are real salt of the earth people.
Okay,
Zach.
Fair enough. I mean, look, if you work with us, you got to have a goofy side to you. As long as he has that, I think.
Jeremy, before we let you go, we got to ask, what have been your thoughts on Alex Condon and putting on for Australia over at the Gators basketball program?
Yeah, good for him. It's always good to have an Aussie around. You know what I'm saying? We have a fair few on the track team as well. One on the tennis team as well. It's always good to walk around the facilities, get lunch, and hear that familiar accent. So, good for him. Happy for him. I'm happy to see anybody doing well, but another countryman doing well is even better. So
first time seeing him, were you a little taken aback by the height? I mean, that dude's
a little bit,
serious size.
Big boy, yeah. Because most people would say I'm pretty tall at 6'4", but when you see somebody show up as tall as him, you kind of get, you feel small for sure.
And apparently, he was a legit at footy.
I heard that too. He might have been his dad or something played.
Is that AFL or rugby?
I think it was AFL.
Yeah,
I'd have to follow that up with him because maybe we should have him come out here for a kick.
Yeah,
he is. Yeah.
Well, you don't kick enough. I have a Ray Guy vote, but haven't even been eligible despite the rankings and where you rank. Haven't even been eligible to vote for Jeremy. So I don't know that fans will want you to be eligible this year. But I'm sure that would be a cool thing to take home that award. I wanted to ask, the last thing was, every Monday, Billy Napier comes in and we do our press conferences and he talks. Well, I met with the leadership committee and you're part of that. So I think most fans are wondering, why is a punter part of the leadership committee? But how is that comprised?
You aren't wondering that, Nick.
No, not me. Why aren't there more specialists on is my take.
Right.
How did that come about and how were you selected for that? When do you guys meet just as the committee? And then how do you feel, your meetings with coach go in terms of, hey, this is what the locker room is feeling like. This is what we think needs to happen. And how does that process work?
Yeah. I think over the past couple of years, I have shown leadership qualities per se, like kind of in that sense. I wouldn't throw myself out there as like a big alpha dog out the front yelling kind of guy. I like to work myself as kind of a gray man. You kind of noticed I was there, but I didn't really do a whole lot in the sense of getting up and showing myself. I work in deals of social capital. I We'll say hi to everybody every day. You know, try and get a little conversation in with most people. Try and learn something new from them every day. And as you work through that, guys are more inclined to open up to you and listen to you when you come to them, and they know you're coming from a place of love instead of just calling them out on a behavior, you know? So these guys are like, oh no, he actually really cares about me. I should probably listen to what's being said, you know? And that's the only way that I ever give advice to somebody, is to say, like, I want you to be better. I can see you can be better. And I'm coming from a place of love and saying, like, let's do this, you know? So, I mean, I feel like I did a good job at that. And Napier saw that, and he put me on that leadership team as well. But when we used to meet, I think once a week during the season last year, and we'd bring up from week to week different maybe issues that we'd seen, little things we wanted to fix. And Coach Napier would leave that open to the room and say, give me your thoughts, because you guys are in the locker room. You know, I only see so much. So give me your thoughts and how we can go about that. And it would be a really good open dialogue from players to coach. And we would sit there and come up with things that we could openly do together that would help fix any of those little nicks that we thought needed to be fixed.
And then we have two from fans here that are watching you. Any particular football players and or soccer, rugby players that you look up to?
In this, I particularly look up to American football players here, just because of the route I'm trying to take. I look up to a lot of the Aussie guys that have come before me, watched their success, and really just hope to put it into my own. So, you know, a couple guys would probably just been watching Mitch Wisnowski, Cam Johnston, a couple other Aussie players, Michael Dixon, that have been playing in the league for a while and doing well. So those are the guys you look up to and you hope to strive to be as well. So, yeah.
And then we talked a little bit about this, but toughest and easiest stadiums maybe to kick in.
Let's see. I don't think they're tough anymore. Like I mentioned earlier, it's more.
You mentioned those smaller ones. I think like Missouri. Right. I don't know that you kicked at Arkansas, but Arkansas has got like an open end zone, one open end zone as well. Ole Miss.
That's weird.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean those weather aspects we learn to control. So I don't think they've been really that tough. I think the only time I've ever found a stadium tough was my first year starting, and we went up to Kentucky. And I think I had a punt out of the end zone, which was right in front of the student section. That was the first time I couldn't hear the cadence. And I was sitting back there, and I was just, my eyelids were peeled back, and I was just staring at the ball because I couldn't hear when it was going to be snapped. And I had the whole student section behind me yelling and getting loud, and I knew that I had to have a good punt out of my own end zone, because the worst thing you can do is shank it out of your own end zone. So I think that's the only time that I ever found a stadium tough. Because of that crowd noise. But since then, you've kind of learned to deal with that, and with the weather aspects as well. You kind of just learn the tricks of the trade and how to deal with different weather aspects. And after a while, you just forget about the crowd noise.
Zach was down on the field, and then on away stadiums, I get down there for the end of games. Some colorful comments, anything within reason that has, or anything that you've heard from on the road that's even made you chuckle, like, okay, that was good. Might not turn around and give them props for that, but that made me laugh. A lot of it's not laughing stuff either.
Yeah, no, I mean, but being
kind of nasty.
Yeah, being a specialist, you learn to just take it. You know, you got to have tough skin to be a specialist. So, nothing I could say on live public.
Don't get us demonetized.
Exactly, nothing I could say, you know, without getting myself in trouble. But fans are quite good. They're witty, you know. They pick on the names. Sometimes they'll go through your social media and find some friends and start talking to you about that. And even that'll make you turn your head and go, who? You know, so it's fun, you know, to hear that kind of stuff. And in those moments, I kind of just am thankful for the position that I'm in, because I have somebody that'd rather chirp me and wants me to do bad. So I must be in a pretty good position, you know, doing well for myself. So that's how I kind of look at that.
Well, you're going to be going to a new place this year. Do you already have your outfit picked out for Austin, Texas?
I mean, I might just stick with my Akubra cowboy hat. You know,
You're gonna fit right in.
There you go. My Aaron Williams boots, all Australian made. I'm just gonna fit right in, I guess. I'm excited for that. New place, new atmosphere.
You've done something with your hair every year. You had the mullet, long hair, short hair, the mustache, which I think you told me was just too much maintenance.
It was, yeah.
Plus, with all the ball talking we've done, if you've got mustache wax on your fingers, don't need you dropping a punt while trying to look good during Gator Walk. What's planned for this year?
I haven't come up with it yet.
Okay.
It's open to suggestions. So if guys want to suggest what I should do for this year, I'm open to anything.
Or girls.
I'm with a Fu Manchu. If you can get the mustache to go halfway down, but shaved here, like the old school American biker, that would be electric. Would start the season off right.
I'll look into some new flavors. We'll see what comes out.
Whatever works for the Ray Guy campaign.
He's got to punt more.
Yeah, we do. I'll do my best.
Well, and on that final note, just coming in as your final year, and obviously as a leader, what are your personal goals for this year, and obviously kind of hopes for your team in 2024?
For me personally, I'm just hoping to be more consistent throughout the whole year, putting the ball exactly where I need to, put together some good film for the NFL, but also in the situations that I put in, help the team out. And those are the biggest goals for this year.
And then, on the Vanderbilt game, not only did you have the legendary 28-yard dash on the fake punt, you also had your career long. Are you hoping that you extend that this year and get a 70-yarder, or do you want to stick with the perfect number?
The perfect number.
Yeah, the perfect number of a 69-yarder.
A really nice punt.
Perfect punt, yeah. We'll see. If the situation pertains to it and we're open for it, I might see if I can bang it long, but a lot of things have to come together for that to happen without it going badly for us again, without kicking coverage and good things like that. So
maybe we'll see how this on your weather app one day, you'll look at it and this could be the day.
Behind me. Yeah. Yep, exactly.
Well, we need to get whatever you've been doing to campaign for another fake is clearly not working. So we might need to get you a new campaign manager,
maybe,
to really hammer that point across. Last year, last chance to run for another first down. I think that's pretty important. Yeah, as a Ray Guy voter, I think it's very important.
Of course, yeah, we'll do our best.
I know a guy if you need a new campaign manager. So, Jeremy, appreciate the time, man. Always great catching up. Hope you enjoyed your break, and good luck getting back at it, man.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, right, Florida punter Jeremy Crawshaw joins us. Appreciate it, man. And we will move on as we turn pages now. Obviously, great time with Jeremy and fun stuff. I know Nick, that's a treat for him to be able to be joined by a punter on this show.
I think we've had have we had Johnny on before? Yeah, we had Johnny on. We had Johnny and Spurrier, I think, like on the same show.
That's right. That was like your highlight, basically. You get a punter and the GOAT on the same episode. Hard to top that, but Jeremy was fantastic, and obviously, I want to circle back on this hire that we were talking about, Nick, before we brought him on, but also, you heard some, numbers that Jeremy dropped there, and obviously the special teams, there's been a big conversation about that with the fans, Nick. It's been throughout the season, been throughout the off season. They wanted to know if that was an area that was going to get addressed, and obviously Houston coming on is going to add something to that room. But you're also not taking away Chris Couch. And you heard there from Jeremy, pretty adamantly about how he feels about him, the job that he's done, and why, he is still going to be on staff working with Joe.
Yeah, it will be interesting. So it's another off-field, role for them. So, and listen, I'm not trying to get Florida investigated or anything, but I think if you look across the country, And the NCAA was even the D1 Council was even voting on allowing analysts to do more than they're currently allowed to do. Currently, they're not allowed to coach when you're on the grass, essentially. If you're on the field, whether it's practice or a game, I think if you are at any college football game, you'll look down the sideline and see more than 10 people, 11, including the head coach, talking to players. So I think ultimately it's another name there. And listen, Florida had a boneheaded error having two guys on the field at the same time wearing the same number in Utah. They had the penalty later in the year. Which game was that, Zach? Arkansas, with too many men on the field. But like to Jeremy's point, there's a lot of statistical evidence. I think the big mistakes stick out in your mind. And it's almost like being a long snapper. I remember growing up, there was a long snapper who messed up a snap at the end of his 17-year career that kept his team out of the playoffs. And other than that, it's the first time you'd ever heard this guy's name, because as long as he's doing his job, you never hear his name. The long snapper got the ball where it needed to go. He messes up one time, and it just happens to be in a big spot. And a 17-year career is then bookended by that. I think we hold on to those big mistakes, but for the most part, kickoffs are a non-issue. Trace Mack just kicks it out of the end zone. And for the most part, Jeremy Crawshaw is hitting 45-yarders with 5 seconds of hang time, and you're getting fair catches. So it will be interesting to see. I think the next time we talk to Billy Napier, it's to ask, like, hey, what is Joe Houston's role? Because we don't know. We just know that he will be working hand in hand with Chris Couch, working together with Chris Couch. It's not like he came in to be Couch's boss or is coming in to work for Couch. I think they are working in tandem.
Yeah, and Billy has long said too that special teams duties were always split up amongst the staff even before things were reshuffled during the season. There were some changes that happened during the year, but like even before then, it was never all on one guy. And that is partly due to the fact that the coach who coordinates special teams is an analyst. So there is going to be some limitations to what he can do, and therefore you're going to have some other coaches involved. So, but Joe Houston will be the latest addition to the staff. And before we get into that, want to give a shout out to rogueshop.com and encourage all Florida fans to go check it out. If you have issues sleeping, chronic pain, and or anxiety and stress, Rogue Shop sells CBD, THC, edibles, smokables, and vapes, as well as handcrafted bath salts, soaps, and candles. Rogue Shop is a true small business with 5 employees and make all of their products with their own cannabis grown in their manufacturing facility. Visit rogueshop.com. That's ROGUESHOP.com. And to wrap it up, Nick, with the hire of Joe Houston, that makes 8 hires for the Florida football program. And, you know, there might still be something that happens, but right now there's 8 hires that have been made. And, you know, I think for the most part, at the very least, the openings have been filled, and he's even added some more to the staff. But overall, you're talking about 3 defensive coaches, 3 strength coaches, one of whom is also the new team nutritionist. You've got a chief of staff in Mark Robinson. We learned his official role this week. And then obviously you have Joe Houston as a special teams coach. So a lot of areas addressed there, Nick, and some areas that a lot of people wanted to see addressed. What are your thoughts on the 8 hires that Napier's made this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, the defense was in large stretches in games historically bad for Florida football standards. So you see a bunch of
standards
changes.
Are high.
Yeah. So you see a bunch of changes on the defensive side of the ball. I think there were concerns from some players that they weren't strong enough. I watched an interview where Trayon Webb said, we ran so much last year, a bunch of guys were getting hamstring injuries, and he felt that the lifting now is more geared towards getting bigger, stronger than it is to be a track team. So I think the areas that you saw last year, hey, the offensive line stunk. If you say that, okay, well, why are they getting bullied? Why are they getting pushed around? Is it technique, or does technique not matter because you're just not strong enough or strong as the guy in front of you? And the guy in front of you was always going to push you because he's just bigger, faster, stronger than you. So I think the areas that were glaringly bad, there have been changes. We'll see. There's no way anyone can tell you, yes, it's been fixed.
Or it's going to be better. Yeah.
Or it's going to be better. You can hope. It's just different. And you hope that a new voice or a new technique or a new path leads to more success. But right now, there's just hope that those changes will work out for the better. And we'll continue with our company line. Everyone wants to know about an offensive coordinator. There is no job opening for Florida as we know it right now.
And there is no openings with any coaches either. Everybody is signed and has a new contract, and we can end that speculation after January 31st as we join you guys on February 1st. There's nothing to be waiting on with that. So if there's any change that is going to be made in terms of play calling, it'll have to be done within those confines. But look, we can point to a lot of issues that Florida's had that have led to 3 straight losing seasons. But as Scott said on our last Gators Online show, the biggest issue is defense. And that is one area where from 2008, after all those young defensive players had a really tough season in 2007, from 2008 to 2019, I mean, the Gators were elite on defense, top 30 unit every single year, top 10, top 5 most of those years. I can't remember all the numbers off the top of my head. And then since 2019, it has just been a drop-off, a drastic drop-off. And as we talk about the most impactful hires of those 8, Nick, I think that Roberts has to be one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's one, too, where – probably putting my negative Nick hat on. What is his role? Is he calling plays? Is Austin Armstrong calling plays? Austin Armstrong worked under Ron Roberts, who's 18 years his elder and who was just a defensive coordinator. Now Ron Roberts gets one of those super fun Billy Napier job titles, executive czar, and supreme leader of defense, or whatever they called him. That's an interesting dynamic. These two have history together. I think Ron Roberts was more of a mentor, especially early on in Austin's career, but he brings a ton of experience. How do those guys mesh? How do Florida's players take Ron Roberts' direction in his leadership and his coaching? So new isn't always better. I think we all sit here, everyone listening to this, and you and I who cover the games, hope it's better, certainly than last year. But
it's going to be different.
I'm not one of those people that always says it can't get any worse, because we get that from fans a lot. And I've seen worse. I've seen people say it can't get any worse, and I've seen it get worse. So
that's what they said after the 2020 season. When Florida, that was the first drop off year, and it was a bad year on defense, and we're like, it can't get worse than that, and then it did.
Brother, I would have taken that 2020 defense last year.
Yeah. So, but now those hires are in place. I wouldn't expect that Joe Houston is going to get announced, but he'll be on his way to Gainesville, and obviously the Gators are already going with their strength program under Fitzgerald, and 2 new strength coaches as well, including the new team nutritionist, a very unique role there, with Jake Sankel coming over from the Commanders, and he was one of only 2, or the Commanders were one of only 2 teams in the NFL that had someone who was a team nutritionist and an assistant strength coach. So it's a very unique role that he now comes to UF with. So that'll be something that we hope to learn more about as they go through the offseason. But Appreciate Jeremy for joining us this week, allowing Nick to come back off of PTO and just walk right into an interview with one of the best punters in the country. It doesn't get any better than that, right?
Yeah, we were supposed to do it last Thursday, and I completely forgot that I was off. And I was like, we gotta push it. We gotta push it back a week.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we got to talk to him. And before we get out of here, I want to give a final shout out to Prairie Dental Center. I want to encourage all Florida fans to go check it out. The doctor is a UF grad who's practiced in Gainesville for 3 decades and developed a deep understanding of how to diagnose and treat various dental problems, along with advanced skills and knowledge to provide more effective and efficient care to his patients. If you're having dental concerns or just need a cleaning, Prairie Dental Center offers a wide range of options to meet your needs. Give their office a call at 352-373-3431. Tell them Gators Online sent you, and your new patient exam will be free. And that'll do it for this week's show. Nick and I will be back in our regularly scheduled programming, and we'll have more guests. Obviously, we'll turn the page on basketball, start talking some baseball as well. But as always, we'll have the focus of the conversation be Florida football and the latest happening with Napier's program. Next week, we'll have some new signees to talk about, as the second signing day is right around the corner. So a lot still happening. Appreciate Jeremy for joining us this week. For Nick Del Torre, I'm Zach Albaverdi.